Hey, this is Wes, and in this video tutorial for CG Cookie, we've been talking about Beast, light mapping within Unity. In the Part 1 tutorial, we left off talking about texel resolution between our objects. And continuing on with that in Part 2, we're going to go ahead and discuss how we can adjust the individual texel resolution for these objects in our scene. So to actually control that, here, let's make sure that we kind of get a little bit better angle on this. You can see what we're doing with these two checkerboard patterns here. So what you can do with this is, again, you can come down underneath your bake here. We've got our global resolution here. We can actually start to just pull this guy in. And you can see that we start to get more resolution across this. So we can increase that texel density here. And so let's just say that we might want to leave this at I don't know, let's just say maybe like 7 or something. You know, you also want to be careful with this too, because this is actually going to increase your light map in a sense that if you have a lot of objects in your scene, it's going to have to, in order to work with this certain resolution here, it's going to have to maybe break off and create more and more light maps to do that. So, which again, in turn could be more texture memory. So you got to watch that. So you want to try to get, again, it's kind of a balancing act, like make sure that we get it, you know, right the way we want. So let's just say that we bring this guy down to like that's probably not enough, 3. Let's do just 5 here. So we'll stick with 5. And again, we look at this board and you can see that it's not matching this at all. So what you can do with that is you can go through and you can select this guy. And so we've got this guy selected. We can actually go over to our object tab, and then we've got this option here for light map, and it says the scale and light map. So we can actually adjust its scale in the light map. So watch as I start to move this value, I can individually change this. And so I can say if I bring it up, you can see that, you know, it's getting less and less information or less and less texel density. If we start to drag towards the right and increase its scale in the light map, we can start to get a bit more texel density into that. So that looks a bit more even. So if we take a look at these two guys here, now you can see that, you know, they look a bit more even as far as resolution goes. And what I did with that as well is I did the same thing here with these barrels. So again, if we pull this back and kind of look at this barrel, its texel resolution between the barrel and the board and things like that, they're all looking, you know, close enough or you know, fairly good enough. And so that's something that you want to be sure, again, just making sure the texel density is even throughout your objects in your scene. And so what I tend to do with this is I knew I was going to light map this. So if in my case, and this is actually a small scene, if we take a look at this, you can see that we've got all these items here, and it's really not a lot, but imagine you got this full level and you had to go through and do this for every single one of these things. That would be a real pain. So what I tend to do is I placed in my scene these areas here. So I had these two guys, the board, and then I knew that I was going to have basically one barrel, longboard 1, a variation longboard 2, and then this short board. So I placed these items into my scene, and then I adjusted the scale and light map and all that stuff ahead of time. So that was done, and then I would go ahead and just, you know, hit this guy and then duplicate him in the scene and just basically spread those guys out all over the place manually just in my scene. But I had already set that scale in the light map so everything matched. So this was something that I did very early on, is I knew that, okay, well, I'm going to be, you know, placing these items all over the place. Let's make sure that the resolution is all set before we do that, because it could be a real pain to go back and do this afterwards. So now that we have that, our resolution set, we'll go ahead and turn off our show resolution, and now we know that we're pretty good there. So let's go over to our bake, and that's the main thing that I want to show with that. Something else that we can talk about real quick is this lock atlas feature. So one of the things is once you do this light map bake, the light map, you know, your objects are arranged in basically like a texture atlas, and that's your light map. And every time you do a bake, that is automatically the light map or the objects in the scene are automatically atlased to that light map. And so that's fine. I mean, for the most of the time, that's not a problem. But what if you have something set up a certain way and you don't want that to happen? You can actually lock this atlas, so that won't actually happen. You know, it won't affect that. So that can be something that could come in use. I typically don't worry about it. I set everything up and just leave it off or whatever. My main thing I'm messing with is my resolution. So now that we've kind of gone through these settings of how to set up how all this stuff works, and we've got basically our quality. So if you kind of look at the top part here, we've got our mode, we've got our quality, from bounces to bounce intensity. That's talking about basically the lighting, you know, the actual light, you know, attributes that we're working with. And then if you take a look at final gather down to interpolation points, that's talking about the global global illumination quality, and then here we've got ambient occlusion, and then that's when you come down to your resolution. So finally, we've got this maps tab, and at this point we don't have anything set, we don't have any maps baked. So what you can do at this point is you got everything set up, we can actually do a bake. So what I'm going to do is there's two modes that you can actually do this in. You can, if I hold down this little arrow here, you can see that we've got bake entire scene or bake selected, and then you had bake probes if you were using probes. I typically would use bake selected. So let's just say that I had different parts of this level, and this area was getting a light bake, and then over in this area I already baked that. I don't want to mess with that anymore. If you break your scene up, that's why I place all of my static assets to be light mapped underneath a node, or excuse me, a game object like this. So if I just select that game object, it's selecting all the children, and now I can just quickly do bake selected. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and do this. We'll do a bake selected, and I'm going to go ahead and pause this, and we'll let that go. But you can see right now it's doing is here, it's baking the texture. Okay, so we're back, and now we have our scene light mapped. I'm just going to click out here just to deselect everything. And when you first look, you can see that we get some nice quality here of the lighting. Now, I'm getting some really soft edging and things like that, and that's going to have to do directly with that texel resolution at this point. So I did decrease that down, but in my case, you know, that's okay for this scene. One of the things that you might be thinking right now is, wow, this looks really blown out, and it does, but we'll worry about that here in just a moment. But for now, you can see that we get some really nice, you know, global illumination. I can see a lot of that blue from that skylight color in here. And so let's go ahead and come over to our maps tab. And now you can see that we get we've got two maps. And when I have actually, you know, when I had a higher, excuse me here, let's go back to bake. When I had a higher resolution setting on this, it actually took this light map here and it split that down into multiple maps. And so that was because the resolution was high enough that it was like, oh, I can't pack all this down into one light map. I got to make more and more and more. So sometimes it can be, depending on your scene and how many assets you have, you may need to work with this resolution. So that's where I really derived this resolution setting from. Just doing a couple test bakes, I saw like, wow, man, this thing's creating like 3 or 4 light maps for this. I don't really want to do that. So what I ended up doing for that was just decreasing the resolution so I can only get one light map in here. And then you see that we've got our light maps in here. So if you ended up having multiple light maps, one of the cool things you can do is you can actually hover over this map and just right click, and you can say select light map users, and what that'll do is it will select all of the items that are associated with that light map. So in our case, it just happens to be this one light map here. So let's do one other thing to this real quick. So now that we have this guy set, let's talk about, you know, why this is so blown out and what can we do about it. So for right now, and it may be kind of hard to see for this here, but yeah, what we'll probably have to do is fix that lighting here, so, or this exposure. So one of the things you could do is you could go back to your light in your scene, and you could select this guy and you could say, well, the intensity, let me bring the intensity of this guy down before I bake. Let me go back over to my bake settings and say, well, my skylight intensity must be kind of high. Let me bring that down. Let me bring down that bounce boost. Maybe there's too much of that happening. The bounce boost is actually, you know, going to help to illuminate more areas like this that are in shadow, and it's going to do that without causing big blowouts like this. But, you know, sometimes it's too much, and our boost intensity could be too high. So you could go and tweak these things and bring them back. Although the thing that's really awesome about this is what this guy does is, what Beast does is it actually bakes this into a high dynamic range file. So it's actually an EXR high dynamic range format. And so all of this data that you're seeing here blown out, there's actually a lot more data into this. So what's really cool about this is you could just come over to here and you could see that in our assets completed folder, here's our light map. Let's go ahead and just double click this guy. And I'm going to load this into Photoshop and click OK here. And now this is our light map. Looks kind of weird, but what we could actually do is just kind of zoom in to what we have over in this corner. And I can actually go and do image, adjust, exposure on this guy, and I can actually just pull this exposure down. Now, as we do this, you can see that, you know, there's a lot more, since this is a high dynamic range image, there's a lot more information here that we can work with. So let's just pull this exposure down a little bit here in Photoshop so that we can visually see in real time, save, and we go back to Unity, and boom, we get a complete and total different look to this. And so this is obviously too dark, but if we kind of scroll and move around in here, one of the neat things about this is you can actually see our directional light map. So if I kind of look into this area, especially this gated area, let's zoom in real close, you can see that even though this is a light map scene, I've got the real-time lighting is not happening. And to show that, we'll come over here and we'll take this guy, and we'll set this guy to be his render mode. We'll just go ahead and say, well, no, not that, his light mapping mode. We'll just say baked only. We'll hear it, and even we'll just turn this off completely. So now this is off. You can see that we're still getting some specularity, and we're getting normal information, or the appearance of that. If you come over and look in this danger sign here, you can see that kind of looks like it's got a little bump to it. If you kind of back away, it might be kind of hard to tell on this screen capture, but as we start to kind of move around our scene, we get a little bit more specularity to this. One of the ways that I can actually tweak that, and here, let's actually go back and undo my light there. I'm going to select this guy. I'm going to come over to his material, and the specular color, I'd actually pulled this down a little bit. So let's go in and adjust our specular color. So let's just pull this up. We'll just exaggerate this look a little bit here. So we pull this up in that material. Here, let's really exaggerate it. Let's just pull it all the way up. So now you can see that what we have with this is now you're getting this specular look and normal map appearance here on this normal map surface. So that's what directional light maps is doing for us, and that's a really cool. However, if you're, in our case, this is supposed to be dirt, and this wood wouldn't be that shiny, so it looks kind of fake. So again, that's why I pulled this down. So subtle is the best choice for this, but you can actually go in and you can even tint these colors here, which is really cool. And so here, let's just pull this down maybe a little bit more, like about in this area here, that specular color on that material. And so that's what we get. If we go ahead and take a look at this wood plank here, it looks pretty cool. So that's what we're getting in that case. Now, something else to point out was we adjusted that exposure. Let's go back to Photoshop, and let's do it again. Let's go to our image, adjust exposure, and let's just increase this up just a little bit more. And we'll save it again, and we'll come back. There we go. So you can see that just brighten things up. So again, since that's a high dynamic range file, we can do some really cool tweaks in real time like that. But one thing to note is that we look at this guy, and here's the actual area of our UV map, which is actually consisting of, if we back out, this and this guy. So we're not looking at the barrels or the boards or anything like that. We're looking at the actual ground. That's what that UV map is. And it's really, really tiny in this. It looks kind of crazy. It's when you look at all this information, you're like, wow, can't really tell what's going on. So what we can do with this, whoops, let me undo that. We can select, let's say, these two guys here, and we'll go back to light mapping. And what I want to do with these guys is make an adjustment to them. And what I want to do with that is come over to the scale and light map, and we're going to adjust these guys. So what we're going to do with this is I'm going to take these guys, and I'm going to pull this up to like maybe 4. Here, let's try 5. So I'm adjusting the scale and the light map because these two guys, this is like my main area here. This is huge area, and these are important. So I really want to see this in the actual light map. So now that I've adjusted the scale to these guys, I want to do a bake again here. So let's do environment bake. Let's go back and let's do a bake selected. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pause and let this bake happen, and then we'll come back here in just a second. Okay, so we're back, and now you can see that we've got our scene light mapped again. This looks a bit blown out again, so we got that same issue. However, now we've got this new light map. Let's double click to load this guy into Photoshop. And now you can see that because we actually did that scale, you can see that these ground plane areas, they're bigger. They're bigger in the light map, and now we can really see this a little bit more. And there's a reason why I want to be able to see this. I'll show you that in just a moment, but I still don't like that. Let's just make it a little bit bigger. So what we'll do is we'll come back. I'll go to maps. I can actually clear these guys. We can go back. It's going to turn off our light maps. Let's select these two guys again, and let's do scale and light map. Let's just maybe take this up to, I don't know, let's just say 12. Okay, so again, we'll come back, we'll select these guys, and we'll do a bake selected. And let's let this bake, and we'll be back in just a second. Okay, so we're back again, and this time we've got a different result. So now you can see that we have three light maps, 0, 1, and 2. And if we come over to our Maps tab, you can see that the array size for our light maps is 3. So we have 3 light maps. And then here we are, and it shows them here in this map section. And the reason, again, we have 3 is because we increased the resolution of this ground base area here to so much so that there wasn't enough resolution to contain all of our items here, and so it had to spill over into 3 different maps. And so in this case, I'm not real happy about this. I mean, it'll be fine, but I don't want these 3 maps. But I was able to get more resolution, so I actually pulled that over a little bit more so I could try to force this multi-map issue. But again, like I said, you can come over into this area, you can right click and you can select the light map users, and then it will show you exactly here in your list here what is actually a part of that light map. So in this one here that doesn't seem like there's a lot of data in it, here let's deselect these guys, let's select this, what's actually in this. And so you can see in this light map it's almost, there's hardly nothing in this light map, so this isn't very efficient. But let's go ahead and take a look at a good workflow for this. So if we go ahead and double click and load this guy back into Photoshop, now you can see that we can really see what we're doing here. We've got this whole entire area. It's real nice and big, and we can see this. And so if I come over to, again, let's do image, adjust, exposure, and let's just take this down to, let's just say negative 0.44, and we'll save this. We'll take it back in. That's probably not enough. Let's just undo that. Go to, whoops. We want to go to exposure. And again, this is so much better. Let's just say 0.7 than just doing a complete and total rebake. Okay, so that looks all right. And let's load this guy up. So here's another one. Let's do exposure, and let's take him down here to 0.7 as well. Save him, and then hopefully these guys are going to match up, and they do. And then we'll grab this guy here, and we'll do the same thing with him. So we'll do adjustments, exposure, negative 0.7, and we'll save that. And there we go. So now we have adjusted our exposure, and that was a lot quicker than doing an entire rebake on that. So that's good there. Now, one of the things that's pretty cool about this is if we come back to this guy, because of the way the UVs were laid out, you can see that they're very easy to see. And so one of the things you can do with Unity is if you come down to your objects, and let me just select this guy, and if you go over to the inspector here, where we might actually import this guy in, you've got this option here to generate light map UVs. I don't typically ever use this, and the reason being is because it is, it works and it's a great time saver, but it's going to generate, I have no idea how this is going to do this. So it's going to generate these light maps, however, and I like to be able to just do 2 UV sets. So real quick. Let's just do this. Let's just fire up my here real quick, and I'll show you. What this looks like here. Let's just come over into, where do we got this guy here? Let's see. Hopefully we can just open this right out of Unity. Let's grab this guy and just double click him. It's going to open in Mudbox. Well, that's fine. That's all we want to do is just look at what we have here. So here's this object. If I come over to the UV view, you can see that, well, that doesn't do too good either. Hold on just a moment. Okay, we're back again. Sorry about that. Didn't want to have you sit there and watch me bumble through finding things. So here's the UV texture editor and then UV set. So I always do it like this. I'll have like this UV set here is just, this is for my actual texture atlas, for my diffuse colors, and then I have a second UV set. So if I select this guy, you can see that here's the UV set that we're seeing inside of, well, when you actually check this out in Photoshop, you can see here's what we're looking at. And so here we're going back to, whoops, we're at my here. And you can see that what we're doing here is if we go ahead and select the UVs for this guy, the important thing is it's basically covering this ground plane. And so I lay these guys out so that I can actually take a look at this and see what I'm doing. So if I ever want to go and edit the light map, which I do often, I can see what I'm doing. So the cool thing about this is, let's just go ahead and make a layer on top, and let's grab a brush. So we're just going to grab a brush, and here we go. We might just not make it completely black, but let's just grab this brush here and just really quick, let's do something, if we can find just something real quick, like I don't know, maybe this brush here. We're just kind of looking for something with some noise here. Yeah, maybe this will work. Okay, let's grab this guy, and this thing out of the way. There we go. All right, so here we'll increase this up. I put this on another layer, and what I'm gonna do is just really quick, I'm just gonna kind of stamp down some of this stuff. So it's like I'm just adding some dirt to my scene, and so I'll do this a lot with my light maps. This is really cool because what it allows us to do is just add in some grime and dirt to our scene really fast. So and again, because I laid out the UVs in such a way that I can really tell what I'm doing when I look at them, you know, I can get away with doing this because I can tell what I'm actually working on. So here we'll just merge that down, we'll save it, and we'll go back over to Unity. And when I do that, you can see that effect that I put in there actually shows up in my light map right over top. And so it's like a really quick way of adding some dirt and stuff to that. And if you just are a little bit more careful in the way that you actually do this, so let's just say that, you know, I kind of pull this down a little bit, maybe it's not so, you know, bright, and then maybe I do like some hue and saturation adjustment, something like that, just to kind of make it blend a little bit closer in. So we'll do that. We'll bring this back, but even just lowering that down, you can see that it really adds to the richness of your scene. Adds some really nice dirt effects right there on top of everything. And it looks really cool, and it's really fast, and you're basically doing this in real time, you know, because, you know, just pop over to Photoshop, make the change, save, Unity update. So that's how I can get some nice dirt and grime type effects like that. And so again, that's the main reason why I make sure that I paint my maps this way. Now in this case, you know, again, it's that give and take. I probably went a little too crazy with it and split myself up into three, but I just really wanted to be able to see what I was painting on there. So there's a lot you can do. The light maps, the HDR, you can actually adjust exposure, so you don't have to constantly be rebaking and things like that. And then you can go and actually paint on top of these guys and put, you know, it's almost like doing some stamp or some stencil detail on top of these guys and actually add. And if your UVs are laid out enough, you could actually add in some like graffiti on the walls and do some cool stuff like that. So again, it's really cool and doesn't cost you anything to do that. Okay, so one last thing that I would like to cover on this crash course here is some advanced things with Beast. So one of the things we can do, if we come over real quick to MonoDevelop, I have this Beast settings.xml. And so what this is and you can actually find this in the Unity manual, you can actually customize all of this stuff that Beast, all these bake settings, you can customize them through an XML file. So if you have a certain pipeline that you follow or something that you work with, you can go through and you can actually adjust all these guys. The Unity manual talks a little bit about some of them. You can actually go to, I think it's Autodesk Gameware site, and find the actual manual to this Beast settings, and you can find what all of these properties do. But there's a lot of really cool things that you can do that's not just, you know, natively supported inside of Unity, but it works by just having this Beast settings.xml file. You set the settings that you want, and then you save that inside of Unity here. If you just save that into this completed folder, you place it right in here, it will override any of these settings. So all of these settings here, that Beast settings.xml file will override all of this stuff, and you can do some really neat things. And so with that said, there's actually someone has graciously created a really cool Unity editor script that's free that will do all this for us. So let's check that out real quick, and that's something that I would highly suggest you check out. So if we go to the asset store, I believe it is called, we'll do a search for it. I actually have it installed, so it's let's see, Lightmap Extended, I believe. And yeah, here it is, and this is really cool. So we definitely want to say to Michael Stevenson, thank you. This is so awesome. And so definitely get this. This is free here. I would definitely just import this guy in, and it'll do a lot of cool things for you. So let's take a look at that just really quick. So let's go over to our window, and now I've actually installed the asset or the package, so it's light mapping extended. So here it is. Let's just dock this guy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, hey, go ahead and generate the beast settings file for me. So it clicks that. Now you can see that it went on ahead and created this XML file for me. So now what you have is basically all of the settings that you would have here in Unity, but you now have them inside of here. And this is just a visual way of tweaking that XML file. And so you get things like, auto threads. You can adjust the filtering, anti-aliasing. This is really nice. So especially if you're used to using like mental ray, and you can see that you've got adaptive mode, you've got your sample. You can tweak all this stuff. Your rays, you can actually come down to let's see, underneath global illumination, you can tweak bounces, rays, points, a lot more stuff you can do here. The really cool thing is being able to use a secondary integrator, so you can do all the way down to like brute force, Monte Carlo, path tracer, that kind of stuff. So a little bit better quality. You've got caching, things like that. One of the things that I want to show here that's really cool about this is you can come over to your environment. Now, you realized before that what we did was we used, and you can see now that we have lightmap extended, or this beast settings files in our scene. We can't even tweak this stuff anymore inside of Unity. We can still tweak like some things like our lock atlas resolution, what type of maps we're doing, but it tells you here that beast bake settings are overridden by the beast settings XML. So again, let's go back to lightmap extended here, and we got our environment type. So we can come down and we've got skylight, but you also have IBL. So beast will also work with image-based lighting. So let's say we go to IBL mode, and we can set an intensity for this guy, and then you can actually browse for a path. So let's do that. Let's just go out and do a browse for a path here. And on my system, I've got this texture library. I've got a lot of HDR stuff in here. And what was a good one? I think maybe just this top one here. And so if we look at this guy, what does it look like? It is this here. So it's basically this Zion Sun Peak. This is just a thumbnail of what it looks like. And I actually have this .hdr file. So I've got this environment version. So this is actually really small, and it's blurred like this. And in any of my lighting that I do with IBL, I'll take like something like this environment, and I'll have it blurred. So what I'm actually using is SIBL, which is a really cool setup for rendering image-based lighting, so be sure to check that out. If you just do a Google search for SIBL, you'll find a lot of cool information on that. But anyways, what they do is they do this environment HDR, and they take the HDR that's used for lighting. It's small in resolution, it's blurred, and what this blur does is actually it spreads out the final gather rays that shoot out, and it just helps to smooth out the scene without having to tweak all your aliasing settings or your global illumination quality settings and stuff. So it's cool. Let's go ahead and take this guy, and we'll just place him in here. So now we're going to light our scene with this image-based lighting, and we can do some things like we can blur it. We don't need to blur it because it's already blurred, so we can just go ahead and turn this off. We could do this emit light from that if we wanted to. We've got a dome rotation, so you can actually dial in a rotation so that the light, the sunlight in that light probe image. Now, what it needs to be an HDR in a spherical format. And it maps to like this, this dome that's around your scene, and you can actually adjust the rotation of that. I have no idea what rotation I need, so I don't know, I'm just going to throw it out there to 100. But let's just go ahead real quick and do this. Let's bake this guy in. So one of the things I'm going to do before I do that, just to speed up everything, I'm going to go back to this guy, and I'm going to change this back down to like maybe 4. Scale that in light map, because the more light map sets to bake, the longer it takes. So let's just do that real quick. And let's go ahead and do this. Let's go to light map extended, and we'll do bake selected. And I'll just pause this real quick, and I'll come back when it's ready. Okay, so we're back from that final bake, and so now what we have is a scene that is using image-based lighting instead of just a skylight, and it's a lot nicer. You get a lot more intricate detail in what you're using, just as far as just lighting. I mean, I'm getting a lot of nice color variation and things like that. So what I did with that was just made a few tweaks. It pulled up the intensity, took the dome rotation to 0. Underneath global illumination, I increased the bounce boost a little bit. and then I used the secondary integrator. I did some Monte Carlo with that, and so this is the effect that I get in the end. So it's really cool that you can actually use this image-based lighting from this, and you can get totally different looks just by using different HDRs. And so you can change your lighting setup really quickly. Here's an area that I really want to show that turned out extremely well. I thought was right here in this area, and what I did was again using the secondary integrator is that you get this really nice intricate play of color here. So you can see that some light reflecting off this board. So we got some sunlight hitting this board, and then it's reflecting off, and you can see where it's really affecting or illuminating the ground in this area. So a nice kind of warmer light as it starts to go away or move off into the coal or into these darker areas. I used way too much ambient occlusion on this bake, so that's what you're seeing a lot of this stuff. I probably should have turned that off or down a lot, but I really like how this image base looks, and it's cool. And you can also see that with the directional light maps, we're getting some nice specular kind of hits in this area, so it really comes to life. You can really kind of see that here in the normal map from these wood planks here as I start to kind of pan around that. So that concludes this video on using Beast with Unity. Beast is an amazing light mapping tool. It's one of my favorite features of Unity. It's easy to use, and with tools like this Light Map Extended by Michael Stevenson, we can actually have even more power within Beast. And the IBL effect that we get from lighting, being able to quickly change lighting environments, things like that, extremely powerful. So I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.